The morning of May 11, 2011 began like thousands of ordinary mornings across America. And parents hurried, their children off to school, commuters filled the roads, and life moved forward without warning. That one family in Aurora, Illinois, was about to become the center of one of the country's
most haunting missing child mysteries. 6-year-old Timmothy Pitzen was dropped off at kindergarten by his father.
A father said goodbye to his son that morning, expecting they would see each other again later that day. But within minutes, the ordinary routine took an unexpected turn. Later, Timothy's mother, Amy Fry-Pitzen, arrived at the school claiming there had been a family emergency, and school staff had no reason to question her. She signed her son out and walked away.
It would be the last confirmed time anyone would ever see Timothy alive. At first,
nothing appeared unusual. Parents occasionally picked children up early from school, and no one imagined that a carefully planned chain of events had already begun. Amy drove Timothy to the Brookfield Zoo, where mother and son spent the afternoon looking at animals, laughing together, and creating memories that investigators would later
reconstruct through surveillance footage and witness statements. From there, they checked into a family resort in Gurnee,
where they enjoyed water slides, games, and pizza. Security cameras captured what appeared to be a happy child enjoying a vacation with his mother. Nothing in the footage suggested fear or distress. The next day, Amy and Timothy traveled north to Wisconsin Dells, a city famous for its indoor water, which
parks and family attractions. They checked into another resort, spent time swimming, playing, and eating together. Hotel.
Employees later remembered them as a normal mother and son enjoying a getaway. Yet behind Amy's smiles, investigators believe a far darker plan was unfolding. At home, James Pitzen had become increasingly alarmed after learning his son had never returned to school and his wife wasn't answering her phone. Family members
received brief calls from Amy, assuring them that she and Timothy were safe, and that they simply
needed some time away. Curiously, she never contacted her husband directly. During one phone call, relatives heard little Timothy's voice in the background saying he was hungry, a heartbreaking detail that would become one of the final confirmed indications that he was alive. Cell phone records later placed those calls near
Sterling, Illinois, but after that, the trail grew cold. On the evening of May 13, surveillance cameras
captured Amy alone entering a Family Dollar store before stopping at a grocery store. Timothy was nowhere to be seen. Hours later, she checked into a motel in Rockford, Illinois. The following afternoon, hotel. Staff discovered Amy dead by suicide. Beside her body lay a note that would send investigators into
a mystery still unsolved more than a decade later. The note apologized for the pain she had,
paused but contained one chilling statement that continues to haunt investigators and Timothy's family. Timothy was safe, she wrote, but he would never be found. Those few words transformed an already devastating tragedy into an unending mystery. One of America's most baffling missing child cases. Police immediately launched an enormous search. Helicopters scanned forests
and rivers. Search dogs, specifically a Belgian Malinois, tracked possible routes. Hundreds of East Asian female volunteers,
northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. Detectives retraced every mile Amy had driven during those 3 mysterious days. Surveillance footage from gas stations, restaurants, hotels, toll booths, and stores was collected. Every receipt, every phone record, every possible witness was examined. Yet investigators soon encountered an extraordinary problem. There was an almost
complete gap in Amy's movements during crucial hours on May 13. Leaving enough time for countless possibilities.
Forensic investigators searched Amy's vehicle thoroughly. They discovered dirt, grass, and plant material underneath the SUV, suggesting
it had been driven onto an unpaved rural area, near vegetation and possibly close to water. Experts, that
attempted to identify the location using botanical evidence, road materials, and soil samples, but no precise location could ever be confirmed. Investigators also found blood inside the vehicle belonging to Timothy, briefly raising fears, "Hi there, we're introducing a new feature of violence." However, family members explained that the blood likely resulted from a nosebleed Timothy had suffered. Days earlier, an explanation consistent with the evidence. The discovery failed to provide definitive answers. Amy's cell phone was missing when authorities searched the motel room, adding another layer of mystery. 2 years later, it
Was found discarded beside a rural highway, but forensic examination revealed no breakthrough clues. Every technological lead
seemed to reach another dead end. The investigation quickly evolved into competing theories. One possibility suggested Amy had secretly arranged for someone to take custody of Timothy before ending her own life. According to this theory, the boy could have been raised under a different identity, perhaps unaware of his true.
Supporters point to Amy's note, insisting that Timothy was safe and with people who would care.
They argue that despite her mental health struggles, she may have believed she was protecting her son from an impending divorce or custody battle. Others believe the note was intended only to spare James additional suffering while concealing a far more tragic reality. They argue that no credible evidence
has ever emerged showing Timothy was transferred to another family. Extensive investigations uncovered no illegal adoption network,
no financial transactions, no communications arranging such a plan, and no witnesses placing Timothy with anyone else. Another theory proposes that Amy killed her son somewhere along her route before taking her own life, hiding his remains in a remote rural location that has never been discovered. Supporters of this theory note the unexplained hours in Amy's timeline, the vehicle's evidence of off-road travel, and the absence of any confirmed sightings after Wisconsin Dells. Yet despite countless searches, no physical evidence has ever confirmed this heartbreaking possibility. The uncertainty has left investigators unable to close the case. Timothy's father, James, has spent years refusing to give up hope. Every birthday, every holiday, every passing year became another painful reminder
that his son could still be alive somewhere. He has repeatedly appealed directly to Timothy, asking that
if he ever sees his own missing person poster or recognizes his story, he should know his
father never stopped searching. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has released multiple age-progressed images
showing what Timothy might look like as a teenager and later as a young adult, hoping someone,
might recognize his face. Thousands of tips have poured into investigators over the years. Most proved false.
Some were honest mistakes. Others were cruel hoaxes. The most devastating occurred in 2019 when a disoriented young man approached police in Kentucky claiming he was Timmothy Pitzen and had escaped years of captivity. News of the development spread quickly across national media. For the family, after years of uncertainty and emotional hardship, it briefly brought a renewed sense of hope.
Allowed himself to hope that the nightmare was finally ending. DNA testing shattered that hope within days.
The individual was identified as an adult man with no known connection to the family, whose involvement quickly became a focus of the investigation.
Fabricated the entire story. He was later prosecuted for the deception, but the emotional damage inflicted upon
Timothy's family was immeasurable. Even today, investigators continue receiving occasional tips from across the United States and beyond. Every credible lead is investigated because authorities insist the case remains active. Advances in DNA technology, digital mapping, and forensic science continue offering new possibilities that did not exist in 2011. Detectives have
repeatedly emphasized that someone may possess information they do not realize is important. Perhaps a forgotten conversation,
an unusual encounter, or a memory from years ago could finally unlock the mystery. Amy's own relatives
have expressed conflicting emotions over the years. They acknowledge her long struggles with mental illness but remain
divided over what they believe happened during those final days. Some believe she would never intentionally harm her son. Others admit they simply do not know. The uncertainty has haunted everyone connected to the case. More than 15 years have now passed since 6-year-old Timmothy Pitzen disappeared without a trace. His smiling kindergarten photographs have gradually been replaced by digitally aged images showing the face of a young man who may not even know his real name if he is still alive. The unanswered questions remain as chilling today as they were in 2011. Did Amy secretly leave her family? Did she hide him somewhere investigators have never searched? Or did the truth disappear forever during
those unexplained hours on a lonely stretch of rural highway? Until new evidence emerges, no one can
answer those questions with certainty. What remains undeniable is that one ordinary school day became the beginning of one of America's most haunting missing child investigations, a case defined not only by tragedy but by the unbearable weight of uncertainty. Somewhere, hidden within those missing hours, lies the truth about what happened to Timmothy Pitzen. And until that truth is discovered, one family, countless investigators, and millions of Americans continue waiting for the answer that has remained just beyond reach since May 2011.
More than a decade has passed, yet the disappearance of Timmothy Pitzen continues to challenge investigators, criminologists, and missing persons
experts across the United States because almost every traditional investigative avenue has been exhausted without producing the one piece of evidence that could solve the mystery. Detectives have retraced Amy Fry-Pitzen's route countless times, reviewed surveillance footage frame by frame, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, analyzed phone records, financial transactions, toll booth
data, hotel receipts, and vehicle movements, hoping that a tiny overlooked detail might finally reveal what happened during those crucial missing hours.
Every mile she traveled has been mapped repeatedly, and investigators remain convinced that somewhere between the Wisconsin Dells and Rockford lies the answer to one of America's most haunting missing child cases. Yet despite years of searching, no physical evidence has ever been found that conclusively proves whether Timothy is alive or deceased, leaving authorities in the rare and frustrating position of investigating two completely different possibilities at the same time. If he is alive, he may have been living
under another identity for years. If he is not, his resting place remains unknown, denying his family
the closure they desperately seek. That uncertainty is exactly what makes this case so emotionally devastating.
Unlike many criminal investigations where evidence eventually points toward a clear conclusion, Timothy's disappearance remains suspended in a painful state of not knowing.
Every birthday becomes another reminder of the years that have been stolen.
Every age-progressed photograph released by investigators forces his East Asian family to imagine the young man he might have become.
Would he have inherited his father's smile? Would he remember fragments of kindergarten, his favorite toys, or the fun days spent at the zoo and water parks during what unknowingly became the final days anyone could confirm seeing him? Or has the passage of time erased those memories completely? Experts who study missing child cases often describe identity as something deeply rooted during early childhood. But they also acknowledge that very young children can adapt remarkably if raised in an entirely different environment.
This reality has fueled one of the most persistent theories surrounding the case. Some believe Amy may have
entrusted Timothy to another person or family, convinced she was protecting him from a future she feared.
Supporters of this theory point to her handwritten note, insisting he was safe and would be cared for.
However, investigators have repeatedly stated that despite years of searching, no credible evidence has ever emerged
supporting the existence of such a plan. There are no confirmed communications arranging a transfer of custody.
No financial records suggesting payment, no witnesses who saw Amy meeting another adult with Timothy, and no DNA matches identifying him living under another name. Others believe Amy's note was carefully crafted to prevent an immediate search in the correct location. If she believed authorities would spend valuable time looking for
a living child, rather than searching remote areas, she may have intentionally written misleading statements.
Yet even that theory raises difficult questions. Why leave such an ambiguous message? Why not simply disappear without explanation? Why create a mystery that would haunt her own family forever? Those questions remain unanswered because Amy took whatever knowledge she possessed with her. Behavioral analysts have examined her writings, emails, and conversations leading up to the disappearance, searching for clues about her mindset. Friends and relatives describe periods of emotional struggle, anxiety, and depression, but many also remembered moments when she appeared loving and deeply devoted to her son.
Human behavior is rarely simple, especially during a mental health crisis, and investigators have always
cautioned against assuming that any single observation fully explains her actions during those final days. One of the most overlooked aspects of this case is how thoroughly modern technology has transformed the investigation over time. In 2011, digital surveillance was far less extensive than it is today. Many rural roads lacked cameras, cell phone location data was less precise, and license plate reader networks were far less common. If the same disappearance occurred today, investigators might have access to significantly more digital evidence capable of reconstructing every minute of Amy's journey. Unfortunately, detectives working this case had to rely on the technology available at the time, leaving unavoidable gaps in the timeline that still cannot be filled. Even so, the case has never truly gone cold. Every few months, another tip arrives. Some come from people convinced they saw someone resembling the age-progressed images. Others originate from genealogy researchers, amateur investigators, or individuals recalling unusual encounters from years earlier.
law enforcement carefully evaluates each lead because history have shown that missing person
Cases can be solved decades after the disappearance through a single overlooked witness or advances in forensic science. Families across America have experienced miraculous reunions after 20 or even 30 years apart, giving investigators just enough hope or even in themselves. Investigators have emphasized that if Timothy survived and grew up under another identity, for James Pitzen, hope has become both a source of strength and a burden. He may have no idea he is a missing child. He could genuinely believe the people who raised him are his biological family. Publicly, he has continued urging anyone with information to come forward, repeating the same heartfelt message year after year. That possibility keeps the investigation alive despite the passage of time. If Timothy is alive and somehow hears this story, his father has never stopped loving him.
At the same time, search teams have never completely abandoned the possibility that physical evidence may still exist in an undiscovered rural location.
Never stopped searching, and never stopped believing that one day they might be reunited. Forests change, rivers shift, construction uncovers forgotten areas, and advances in search technology. Those words have resonated with millions of Americans because they reflect every parent's greatest fear.
the sudden disappearance of a child without answers, without closure, and without knowing whether to mourn or continue hope.
Including drones, improved cadaver dog training, and ground-penetrating radar, continue creating opportunities that did not exist years ago. Organizations dedicated to missing children continue to feature Timothy's case because it remains one of the nation's highest-profile unresolved disappearances. Every advancement brings renewed hope that the truth, whatever it may be, can eventually be uncovered.
Cases once considered impossible have been solved through modern forensic breakthroughs, and investigators,
Age progression experts regularly update his appearance to reflect how he might look today. Remain committed to applying every new technology as it becomes available. Perhaps the most tragic element of taking into account family genetics, facial development, and aging patterns. These images are distributed nationwide in the hope that someone,
The Timmothy Pitzen mystery is not simply that a little boy vanished, but that his disappearance has,
somewhere, will recognize familiar features, perhaps in a coworker, a neighbor, a friend.
left behind a permanent void filled only by questions. What happened during those missing hours?
Was Amy telling the truth when she wrote that her son was safe? Was she attempting to comfort her?
Family with a final lie? Did someone else become part of the story, knowingly or unknowingly? Does the answer remain hidden in a place investigators simply have not found yet? Until evidence emerges. Every theory remains exactly that, a theory. The facts tell us only what can be proven.
On May 11, 2011, 6-year-old Timothy Pitzen left school with his mother. For the next 2 days, they
traveled through Illinois and Wisconsin, visiting attractions and hotels. Amy was later found dead in a motel
room after taking her own life, leaving behind a note claiming her son was safe but would
never be found. Since that moment, no verified sighting of Timothy has ever been confirmed. Everything beyond those facts enters the realm of speculation, and responsible investigators continue separating evidence from assumption. Perhaps somewhere today, a young man unknowingly carries the memories of a childhood that never fully belonged to him.
Or perhaps the truth has remained hidden in silence for 15 long years, waiting for one overlooked
clue to bring an end to one of America's most heartbreaking mysteries. Until that day arrives,
the disappearance of Timothy Pitzen remains more than just another unsolved case. It stands as a painful reminder that sometimes the greatest mystery is not how someone disappeared, but how an entire nation can continue searching for answers that refuse to be found.
If you have any information that could be relevant to this case, no matter how small it may seem, investigators encourage you to share it through the appropriate official channel, because history has repeatedly proven that even the smallest forgotten detail can become the missing piece that finally brings justice, truth, and long-awaited closure to a family that has spent years wondering where their little boy went after.
Walking out of school on what should have been just another ordinary spring morning,